because our next speaker is Imran Ahmed, and he is the CEO of the Center for Countering Digital Hate. And the topic is an exciting one, because it is claimed that the vast majority of COVID-19 anti-vaccine misinformation and conspiracy theories originated just from 12 people. Imagine how powerful those people are, that they are able to, it is estimated that one report estimates that it could be that they have a combined following of 59 million people across multiple social media platforms. So imagine the power that 12 people have to reach 59 million people. Wow. So our next speaker will take us to the world of the whole misinformation and conspiracy theories, help us to understand how it works. He's a recognized authority in the fields of trolling or identity-based hate or misinformation or conspiracy theories or modern extremism and fake news that take place in social media. So our next keynote, Imran Ahmed. Imran, are you ready to join us on the stage?
Hi.
Welcome. So if you want to share any visuals, there's a chance to do that.
No, sadly, it's just me. I do apologize in advance for that.
I think you will be engaging enough, so I'll leave the stage for you, and the stage is yours.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much for the opportunity to talk to you today about a topic that we've been working on at the Centre for Countering Digital Hate for around, over 2 years now, which is anti-vaccine misinformation and how that spreads on social media platforms, and then how it took advantage of the COVID pandemic. And that's the first thing to remember, that anti-vaccine misinformation has been going on for a long time. In fact, the origins of the modern wave of anti-vaccine misinformation, eliding, so the claims that vaccines cause disease, not prevent disease, really originate in its modern form with Andrew Wakefield, a British physician who wrote a paper which was published in 1998 on the link between autism and the MMR, the measles, mumps and rubella vaccine. And that paper had a sensational effect in the United Kingdom and then around the world, leading lots of parents to doubt the safety, the effectiveness of the MMR vaccine and whether or not they could give it to their children. The study was subsequently proven to be very problematic. It had a lot of invented data. There were conclusions drawn not based on the data, and it was withdrawn from publication. But by then the damage had been done, not just in terms of people doubting whether or not vaccines could cause problems, but also it had created a new business model. Because what Andrew Wakefield, the author of the paper, discovered was that, in fact, you could start to sell content, fake cures, opportunities to listen to the author, tell his story, and make a good living out of it. He was drummed out of the United Kingdom, in fact. So he had his sort of formal license to practice medicine taken away by the General Medical Council. And he found himself in the United States, landing in California, where that cancer, the cancer of his lies, was given a chance to metastasize, to grow again in another organ. And that happened, many, many years ago. So I run the Centre for Countering Digital Hate. It's an organization I founded around 5.5 years ago. And we formed it in response to things happening in British, American, and global politics, which were really quite disturbing. So I started the centre in 2016 after two things happened in my experience. The first was the rapid growth of anti-Semitism in British left-wing politics, in particular in the Labour Party. At the time, I was a special advisor in Parliament to the Labour Party. And that came as a great shame to me. I was embarrassed. I was angry that my party was being taken over and filled with people who were spouting anti-Semitic rhetoric, much of which appeared coordinated and was used to bully and harass people online. The second thing that happened was the EU referendum. And in that referendum, I was asked to go and work with Alan Johnson, who was leading the referendum Remain campaign for Labour. And in that referendum, we saw a vast explosion in conspiracism, in particular anti-Muslim conspiracism in the United Kingdom. We saw a rapid growth of election misinformation. We saw bullying and harassing and trolling of journalists who were trying to cover the referendum in a fair way. The aim of the trolling was to make people talk about it in a way that was biased towards Leave. And then just before the end of that referendum, a colleague of mine, Joe Cox MP, was assassinated by a far-right terrorist who, as he attacked her, shouted, "Britain first, death to traitors." Now, Britain First was the first political party in the UK to ever achieve 1 million likes on Facebook. And, you know, to my shame now, I remember at the time when it happened, when they achieved 1 million likes, I responded by saying, who cares? They've got 1 million likes, they've got 1 million clicks, we've got 500,000 members. But I was wrong, because what was happening was that the primary locus, the place where information was exchanged, where relationships are formed, where social mores are normative attitudes and behaviors, and our values are negotiated, was becoming online spaces. In particular, spaces like Facebook groups. And we had just missed that. We'd been sitting in our ivory towers, in our palaces, literally, in Westminster, and we hadn't noticed what was happening in the rest of the country, let alone the rest of the world, because 6 months after that referendum, what happened in the United States? Well, the rise of someone who weaponized online trolls, hate actors, spread misinformation, conspiracy theories. And we saw that it was a route to power. And that to me is unacceptable. If you allow this flow of lies to be a competitive advantage, if there are no consequences for malignant behavior, hate, trolling, bullying, harassment, misinformation, abuse, then you create a competitive advantage for the worst bits of our society. And that can very quickly degenerate, because if there's a competitive advantage for one side, you see a spiral downwards. And in a democracy, that can be not just toxic, it can be catastrophic. So we set up the Centre for Countering Digital Hate to study what was going wrong. And over the following 3 years, we negotiated with the companies, we provided information with Facebook, with Google, with Twitter, and we were told that we were seeing something that no one else had, and that they were very grateful for our information. And what we realized after 3 years is that for 3 years we'd been lied to, that this information wasn't new to them. They weren't actually engaging in a policy process to deal with it. They had no interest of changing the business model that had yielded them such wealth, and that in fact the only thing that we could do at that point was to go public. And so we launched in September 2019 with a report explaining the dynamics of trolling, the reason why hate actors use trolling, because it inadvertently amplifies their content by rebroadcasting it when you engage with it. We also looked at the reasons why people troll on an individual basis, things like negative social potency, getting pleasure from causing pain. It's a psychological characteristic that's highly correlated with trolling behavior. But within 5 months of launching, something else happened, which was the first signs of a potential global pandemic. And I was in the United States at the time. I was in Spokane in Washington State, doing research on an online neo-Nazi group called The Base, when I myself caught COVID in February 2020. And catching COVID, seeing the way that far-right white supremacists reacted to it, which is two ways. They reacted to it first by saying, catch COVID, go to a bus stop and cough on some black people. So use it as a biological weapon. The second thing is that they showed a sophisticated understanding of the fact that during a pandemic, there was going to be a rise in xenophobia. Because if you're scared about your fellow man, if you're constantly looking out for signs of disease, then you're primed to think in an in-out group way. And that's backed up by the social psychology and the neurology. So the social psychology of Michael Bang-Peterson shows a correlation between disgust sensitivity and xenophobia. The neuroendocrinologist, Robert Sapolsky, I remember talking to him in March or April 2020, and he said to me, well, of course it is, because they're actually in the same place in the brain, the insular cortex and the limbic system of the brain. And so we switched to looking at COVID. And you know, COVID disinformation was flowing pretty freely at that point. It was mainly like crazy stuff like 5G rays cause COVID and nonsense like that, easily disprovable nonsense, because of course COVID was all over the world and 5G hadn't been implemented all over the world. But very quickly we realized that there was a group of people that might actually be able to take advantage of this opportunity and cause real havoc, because they were organized, disciplined, extremely sophisticated at online marketing, and that they had a economically sustainable business model for bullshit, anti-vaxxers. So in that time that Andrew Wakefield had been in America, all those years that we just hadn't thought about him in Europe, he'd been building alliances with people like Del Bigtree. You've probably never heard the man's name, but he was actually marching in Washington, D.C., which is where I live now, yesterday, with a crowd of thousands of people. He's a video producer, and he's the guy who produced the first videos like Plandemic, which were these idea that there is some sort of plan behind the pandemic. He's also someone who has a sophisticated studio in Austin, Texas. He knows what he's doing in digital environments. He started making friends, Andrew Wakefield, with people like Joe McCullough, who was a guy who used to say that he sold vitamins, basically really, really normal, boring vitamin D, vitamin C tablets. But he was a brilliant marketer, a very evil marketer, because he realized that the easiest thing to do to get your vitamins sold in a very competitive market is to claim that your vitamins can solve X disease. And so every time anything happened, H1N1, COVID, he would put out a series of quasi-scientific studies saying, if you actually take my vitamin D and quercetin supplements that, by the way, you can buy on my Amazon web store, you can protect yourself from this disease that's coming along. And he's made himself, by his own estimation, $100 million of wealth by doing that. There were others as well who came into the mix. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who had actually been spreading anti-vax misinformation all the way back to MMR and autism, but now was brought into the modern age and was able to build a cult following behind him. He's a Kennedy, for God's sakes. I mean, he may be a convicted US felon, convicted for heroin possession, but he's also a Kennedy. And so he was able to use his Kennedy name to bring some star power to it, very similar to someone from the other side of the political spectrum a few years earlier. And that anti-vaccine misinformation that they produced in digital spaces, we saw the first stirrings in June 2020 when we released our report, The Anti-Vax Industry. by September 2020, while the vaccine was in development, I mean, you can imagine, this is a moment in time, September 2020, when the scientists are sitting there in the labs, they're getting back the first sets of data, and they're sitting there going, oh my God, this works. And at the very, very same time, sitting in private rooms on the internet, and my team were inside these private rooms tracking, recording. We have the videos available and we released a report on it. They were sitting and planning what to do when the vaccine was ready, because they knew they only had to sell three things. One, COVID isn't that bad. Two, the vaccine, that's unsafe and dangerous to you. Three, you can't trust the doctors. Because if you can persuade people of those three things, they won't take the vaccine, they won't bother with the medical advice, and they'll look somewhere else for something else to protect them from this kind of general feeling of fear that they have watching people die. And of course, they've got a solution for you. Vitamin D pills sold on their branded web store. Watch their video, which gives you special information. Of course, you have to buy the video, which gives you special information on how to really protect yourself against COVID. Things like nebulized hydrogen peroxide, which is inhaling bleach. And so they were planning in private how to take advantage of the pandemic. And again, in December 2020, we put out a report, the anti-vax playbook, that laid all of this out in detail. We sent it to every government around the world. We sent it to all the health bodies. At that point, the disinformation dozen, our first sort of breakout report, was in the planning. So we'd been looking at these people and we'd been and we'd asked ourselves the simple question, how many of them actually matter? Because we were tracking hundreds of groups and individuals. We knew that the total following was around 60 million. But we also know that following is nothing. It's not important. The number of shares you get isn't important. What's important is the end impact. Like a share from me, I've got 6,000 followers, is meaningless. A share from, Sacha Baron Cohen, who works with the centre, is worth a lot more because he's got millions of followers. So we wanted to have more of an understanding about what's the actual most impactful producers of misinformation. And when we did the study, it absolutely blew us away, because what we found is that when you crunch the numbers, only 12 people are responsible for 65% of disinformation shares at that point. So in about February 2020, we could identify 12 individuals. And we released a report in March the 24th, 2021, called the Disinformation Dozen, going through those 12 people in detail, warning people that these are super producers of misinformation. Now, why is that important? Because what we knew is that inoculating people against misinformation is the single best way of dealing with it. It's very difficult when someone believes a conspiracy theory to dissuade them of it. You know that from your own lives. Like, all of us know someone who swallowed something at some point, some conspiracy theory, and trying to make them not believe it, it's almost impossible. And so the best way to stop someone believing a conspiracy theory is make sure they never hear it in the first place. Because conspiracy theories are designed to essentially break our programming. They're all based on a non-falsifiable hypothesis, a leap of faith. A non-falsifiable hypothesis, trying to falsify it, is pointless, because it is literally non-falsifiable. And it's constantly able to mutate to cope with criticism taken to it, because it's based on a lie, a gap in knowledge, a leap of faith. And so conspiracy theories, we know, are, that people who believe conspiracy theories tend to be people who are feeling something called epistemic anxiety, which is that they don't know what's true or not, and they don't know how to work out what's true or not. They just desperately want facts, but they want certainty, but they're not sure about what to do. And so conspiracy theories are very good at filling that gap. But they don't satisfy it because they're not based on facts. They're not based on certainty. They're based on faith. And so people then look for more and more and more. Now, from the outside, we call that people going down the rabbit hole. But that's because conspiracism is driven by epistemic anxiety, but the research shows it doesn't satisfy that epistemic anxiety. So people look for more and more and more. And we produced the report with the aim of persuading the companies to take action against them. I mean, you do not have a right to broadcast your misinformation on any private platform. You don't get to do it on state TV, on the BBC, for example. You don't get to do it on even Fox News. It's not your right. I can't turn up to Fox's studio in New York and say, "Hi, Imran, it's my turn to now broadcast my misinformation on your platform," and then go and sit down, have some makeup, and go live to 2 million 75-year-olds in Midwest America. That is a privilege. It's a privilege that on a media platform is generally based on your credentials. On a social media platform, it's based on you following the rules of the platform that we all sign up to when we use it. And the rules are that you can't be hateful, you can't spread misinformation that might kill people, you can't do a whole bunch of things. You can't show a nipple on Facebook, unless you want to get into trouble. Well, there's not a lot of nipples, but there's a lot of Nazis, I can tell you, because the enforcement is bad. The truth is there's a massive gap between what the platforms claim is being done on their platform and how they run their platforms and the reality. And we found that with the Disinformation Dozen. So the Disinformation Dozen had 100 accounts on mainstream social media platforms, either in their own names or via companies and charities. And their immediate reaction after the report came out was literally nothing. The report, which did very well, it was covered all over the world. We've had documentaries made as a result of it. It's been a huge success in helping people understand how a small number of bad actors working on social media platforms can create a massive amount of harm. President Biden cited it in July. He said, "Facebook, you guys are killers. You're allowing these 12 killers, this Disinformation Dozen, to be on your platform." And that was probably the strongest statement ever made by a president towards the platforms. Stronger even than anything that Donald Trump had said, who just claimed they were being biased against him. But when that happened, Facebook came out again, and because Facebook is the 800-pound gorilla of the misinformation market. Generally speaking, if you're told that misinformation is being spread on the dark web, you just ignore it, because no one uses the dark web. It's a good place for organizing terrorist activity. It's not a great place for trying to get my grandmother to believe in misinformation. My grandmother's on Facebook. She's not on Tor. So we knew that Facebook were the particular target of it. And Facebook reacted to President Biden by saying, they put out a blog from their global head of security saying that CCDH's report was a faulty narrative, and that our numbers were wrong. And I'm very, very British. I'm extremely self-critical to the point of being crippled with anxiety at all times. And so I spent a couple of nights where I couldn't sleep, just wondering, had we screwed up the numbers? I mean, this is a big company. This is a big claim from them. We're wrong. And as it happened, thankfully, a few weeks later, Frances Haugen, the whistleblower from Facebook, released an internal document showing that on March the 24th, 2021, the same day as Disinformation Dozen had come out, Facebook had done an internal study which showed the same relationship. A tiny number of bad actors, in fact, they had better data than we did, produced the majority of page views, of post views. So not just sharing data, but actual end view data. They found the very same relationship. So not only had Facebook been lied when they'd said that our narrative was faulty, because the narrative was actually spot on, But we now had proof that for 6 months they'd sat on their hands and tried to PR their way out of a disaster, which has taken hundreds of thousands of American lives, many of whom have died in intensive care, telling their doctors, I thought the vaccine would harm me. That's why I didn't take it. And those people have gone on to die. Countless stories like that from physicians. They allowed that to happen because they didn't want to clean up their platforms. Now, we have a real challenge here. Collectively, as of right now, after the Haugen revelations, after all the work we've done over the last year, 56 of those 100 accounts have been removed. They still have 52.2% of their following. That means that the job is literally half done. And in that time, new people have come forward. Someone like Robert Malone, the physician who claims to have it. I mean, on his own website, he uses quotation marks. He says, the inventor of the mRNA vaccine. And never have quotation marks been more accurately used in history. But he is the inventor of the mRNA vaccine. And he is now one of the leading social media advocates. He was speaking in Washington just yesterday on the Lincoln Memorial to a crowd of anti-vaxxers. A year ago, he had fewer than 2,000 followers. Now he's all over cable news and has a massive social media following. So new people have come forward to fill the gap by those who have been deplatformed. What we've seen happen as well, and we work with security, with the intelligence community on things like the convergence of anti-vaxxers into other movements. So we've seen QAnon and domestic extremist movements, for example, merging with anti-vaxxers. They merge their audiences and they hybridize their ideologies. So they combine their ideologies and they create new conspiracy theories to bind these people together. So, for example, QAnon has now been replaced by, for many people, the Great Reset, which is, and again, QAnon itself is just the New World Order, plus some nonsense about how Donald Trump is the world's greatest pedophile hunter. QAnon minus the Donald Trump craziness, plus the vaccine is here to kill you, that is the Great Reset. So the idea is that the vaccine has been invented by these powerful elites around the world who are using it to depopulate the earth so they can take control and make us do what they want. And apparently what they want us to do is wear masks, because I've got to say, like, if I was in charge of a global cabal and I was in control of the human population, I would think of much more cool things to make people do than wear a mask. Even give me $5 each, because that's $35 billion. It's a lot of money. Yes, there we go. Another crazy evolution of what happens when you allow cancers to sit in the body. We see different cancers merging in the same organs and creating new problems, new types of pathophysiology. So that's the work that we've done over the past year. I mean, in the next year, I gave evidence for the first time to Congress last year, just at the end of the year in December. What we've seen is action starting to be taken. So when I gave evidence to Congress, when I came to Washington in July 2020, there was no real credible chance of there being legislation on things like dealing with health misinformation in the middle of a pandemic. I think now 2022 is probably the year in which we will see global action being taken, the EU with the DSA, the UK with the Online Safety Bill, the US. When I gave evidence, there were around 40 or 50 bills from Republicans and Democrats, which were being discussed in this session that I was giving evidence on. to talk about what do we do about social media. I mean, I say it very simply, but after January the 6th and the pandemic, no one is ever going to ask the question again, is what happens online just online? Is there, does it really affect us in the real world? Because the answer to that is unequivocally yes. The only question remaining is, what do we do about it? Thanks very much. I'll take questions.
Thank you, Imran. A lot of fascinating stuff. I posted the link for Slido questions for Imran. We have a couple of over there. I'll start up with just a couple of insights that were really interesting, I think. You mentioned that conspiracy theories, they kind of fill the fact gap, but it doesn't satisfy the anxiety that people are looking for to satisfy. Rather, they need to look for more. This is a very interesting mechanism. And my question is, if that's an innate mechanism for a person, that they get excited about the conspiracy theory, can we somehow replace it with some other things? If it's kind of unnatural for us, if people feel drawn to us, is it one option that we kind of use some other method that is not a conspiracy theory, but the same way engages the person?
So there are people that do work like that, and there's de-radicalization work, and the people that do decultification, de-radicalization, that try to divert people. I mean, it's a field, and it's not a field that I have any expertise in. It's not an advanced field. I mean, look, the best known field for this is counter-violent extremism and counter-terrorism. So CT and CVE have done a lot of work on trying to divert people from conspiracy theories and lies and misinformation. And the truth is, it's not always successful. And it's really intensive, and it requires a lot of work. And at CCDH, we're a very small organization. We're 17, 18 staff now. Across the US and UK, but we don't have the resources for that. So we thought, well, how do we use our resources best? So there's two ways of dealing with someone who's infected with a lie, which is it's a difficult to reverse condition. You can either treat the condition once they've got it, or you can reduce the R0 of the infectious vector. So what's making them ill is conspiracy theories. Can you reduce the transmission rate of the conspiracy theories? I mean, not to make too fine a parallel, but quite similar to how we dealt with COVID. And that's what we focused on, was how can we reduce the amount of lies flying around there? Because I think one of the key things to remember is that a conspiracy theory like the COVID stuff, anti-vaxxers aren't trying to make more anti-vaxxers, because that's pointless. They don't want to make competition. These are economically motivated actors. They want to create hesitancy. And that's critical, is that their job is not to make us say, I think vaccines will kill me. They're there to make us go, oh, I don't know. And I mean, I felt it myself. So I got married last year, and my wife and I, we're desperately keen on having kids. It's the most important thing in the world to us. And there's nothing I wouldn't do to make sure that we have healthy children. So when I heard the conspiracy theory, when I heard the stuff going around about fertility and the vaccine, I absolutely paused for a second. There's something inside you, it triggers something really primal, really basic, a fear. Well, maybe I should wait. Maybe we should wait till there's more data. And that's the power of it. It's not designed to make you go, I think vaccines contain microchips. It's there to make you go, there's just not enough certainty. So that, the scientific consensus isn't certain enough to fill that uncertainty that I have. And conspiracy theories are like junk food. They're very compelling. They're very big answers to big questions. So, if you think about the origins of COVID, the origins of COVID are deeply, deeply unsatisfying as a story. Basically, an existing coronavirus, a subtype of which is the rhinovirus that causes cold, mutated in one single cell division, in one single viral replication, a new variant was created which had the capacity to cause the damage that COVID causes, and that one genetically advantaged viral particle then managed to infect the entire world. And that's a deeply unsatisfying thing to think through. But that's how every single new pathogen emerges. Like every single new viral variant pathogen emerges. How, you know, the dominant version of flu each year emerges. It's one mutation. It's one particle that kicks off an entire spread. And that's not as satisfying as someone saying, you know, when you're trying to understand why is the entire world, why are 7 billion people hiding in their homes? Why has my life been disrupted? Why are people dying all over the place? Why can I not see my friends or touch anyone anymore? If someone says it's because one viral particle had there was a transcription error, you know, that is really difficult. Whereas if someone says to you, it's because the Jews were behind it, you know, if you already believe that the Jews are a bit funny, it's pretty, it's a bit more chunky, meaty. But it's, you know, it's like a Big Mac. That's the problem with conspiracy theories. Or like a Pringle. I say this from experience. It is like a Pringle, because once you've had one, you know, at 45 minutes later, the entire tube is gone.
So I think it's the difference that if we look at the scientific findings, then often scientific findings are verbalized that we see this result, this may imply to that, but conspiracy theorists say, this is the thing. And maybe people like that certainty that conspiracy theories bring, that this is the thing, and it's kind of like easier for them to cover that.
We're psychologically biased to look for big answers to big problems. Mm-hmm. And then there's frequency bias as well. So we start to normalize and believe things to be widely accepted if we see them frequently. And social media, by virtue of amplifying contentious information, because it has high engagement, because it gets people talking. So contentious information, it then reshapes the information landscape to prioritize contentious information. And I mean, you know, I do this in a lot. How many people have answered a conspiracy theorist with, that's bullshit, or quote tweeted it and said, look at this idiot? Lots of people do that because that's what we do on social media. And that counts as a meaningful social interaction to the social media algorithm. So it says, this is engaging. How many people have retweeted the CDC? Like, I wouldn't, and I'm a dork, and I wouldn't retweet the CDC.
Mm-hmm. So when it comes to those social media platforms, I was just considering that you said that they are not doing anything to tackle that. I was just considering perhaps that even if they would switch out those people, those 12 magical persons, then would it be that those 12 people would go to a new platform, invite all the other people in, and they would just continue doing that over there? So kind of shutting down the Facebook wouldn't solve it.
Do you remember the study on Trump's misinformation? So when Trump was deplatformed, suddenly the volume of the big lie, that the election was stolen, reduced quite considerably. It was like a really sharp reduction. Like the best work on deplatforming as a tool has been done it's been done again in counterterrorism on Al-Shabaab, the Islamist terrorist group. When they were comprehensively deplatformed, it caused absolute chaos for them, and they had to shift an enormous amount of operational resource into reconstituting their broadcast platform. So when they tried to reconstitute it, they spent a lot of energy and a lot of money and a lot of time on it, but actually they never, ever, ever managed to get anything close to their previous following. That's because other platforms don't have the scale. They don't have, you know, they're not on your computer. They're not in the front of your mind. They're not on your phone. You know, who has Parler or Gab on your phone? If you have Parler or Gab on your phone, it's a pretty good sign that you're either a disinformation researcher or you're a right-wing lunatic. That's the truth. And most people don't want it on their phone because most people don't want to have propaganda shoved in their face all day. Most people just want to get on with it. The power of disinformation is when it is seamlessly interspersed alongside kitten pictures, what your family are doing. You know, it's about when it exists, when it slides into your consciousness on the periphery of your attention as you were doing something else, and when your guard is down.
Very, very good point that in that environment you expect that everything is natural and not so harmful between the kitten pictures, but the reality might be a different one. We have a couple of questions and a couple of remarks. So we first have one, a person just wants to thank you for your great and much needed work. That was just a comment. We have a question from Katrin. Katrin asks, could you elaborate on why you think the platforms are not interested in doing more about this information? Just a commercial reasons or more sinister? A bit similar to the previous question perhaps we discussed, but is it just for commercial reason or more sinister?
Yeah, I get asked this question a lot, and I usually give a very set answer of, for them, it's a very simple economic equation. But I mean, like, I was reading a few weeks ago about a car called the Ford Pinto. So the Ford Pinto was a car well before you were born, Harold. It was before I was born even. So in the early 1970s, and basically the gas tank was too close to the exhaust pipe, and the exhaust pipe would get red hot. So if you bumped the back of it, the exhaust pipe would go through the gas tank and it would explode. And the Ford Pinto caused a series of catastrophic fires and explosions, killing lots of people and severely burning others. And Ford had to pay out a fortune in lawsuits. Sometime later, the investigative magazine Mother Jones found a memo from inside Ford in which they had calculated that it was cheaper by a tiny amount to pay the lawsuits that they could predict rather than have a general recall of the car. And so they had calculated it was cheaper to let people burn and die and pay out to the families than it was to make the car safe. Exactly the same sense of impunity is happening with social media companies, where they realize that to clean up hate and misinformation requires them to spend money on moderators and everything else that goes with it, algorithmic development. And the cost of spreading misinformation is zero, because Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act 1996 in the United States gives them literal impunity. So you cannot have any civil or criminal liability for anything a third party writes on your website. And that piece of legislation promulgated in 1996 means that calculus, that equation for them, the cost of fixing it versus the cost of not fixing it, is grotesquely in favor of not fixing it. And they have come to a rational economic conclusion that in the best interest of their shareholders, the best thing they can do is PR their way out of it. They're monopolies anyway, so where are you going to go? All right, I don't like Instagram, it's terrible. Where are you going to go? And, you know, they have essentially come to that rational conclusion. I think there's a second way of looking at it, which I sometimes use with my British friends. I don't use it out here very much, and you'll know why in a second. But you've got to look at it like a Premiership footballer. So these are disruptive companies. Facebook disrupted Friends Reunited, Friendster. Google disrupted Yahoo. Twitter disrupted blogging platforms because it was the first. It originally was called a micro-blogging platform. And it was a way of expressing yourself to the world, but you could do so even faster with massive scale and connectivity and interactivity. And these are companies that destroyed other companies. Think about Yahoo, how big that was and how that's just gone. And they know that one day they will be disrupted. That the technology they have built to such great power in this generation of technology, the technology will move on because the cycles for tech are getting shorter and shorter. And that means the business cycle is getting shorter and shorter. So they're kind of like a Premiership footballer. They got 10 years to make money, and then they're going to be retired when they're 40. And they've got to think, how can I get every endorsement, every dime, every bit of cash I can right now? Because when I'm 40, I won't be able to look back and say, oh, I'm glad I took the right decision. I took the best decision for my wallet and for my future. And that is the way these companies think. They can be disrupted tomorrow. So grab every bit of cash they can today. And I honestly see that dynamic in play every day. I see the terror of being disrupted. Think about how much Facebook is spending right now on the metaverse, because they've realized that 5G technology, where you can stream virtual reality bandwidth, so the bandwidth that's required to stream virtual reality at zero latency is now virtually here. And that moment means massive change. So they've hired 10,000 new staff. They've only got 50,000 worldwide. And they're spending tens of billions of dollars on trying to go and dominate that new space, because they want to be the first company in that space, the first big tech company that survives a tech cycle leap. And they only just about survived the 4G leap because they bought Instagram. You know, Facebook itself only survived because it took that company on, and Instagram has become its biggest growth platform.
I understand, Imran, you have also already looked into metaverse as well, and you have perhaps a couple of things you would like to point out about your first impressions about metaverse.
I mean, you know, very simply, when they launched it, Mark Zuckerberg and Nick Clegg did that really weird little video where Mark Zuckerberg looked into the camera and said, "We've designed this with safety at the heart of the experience from the start." And we thought, you said that last time, Mark. So, you know, to quote Ronald Reagan, trust but verify. So we went to go and verify. And of course, what is version 0.1 of the metaverse is Oculus, which is Facebook's headset, the virtual reality headset. So we sent one of our researchers in to spend a long time in VR. And what he found was that every 7 minutes, he found some content that was genuinely horrifying. Everything from extreme racism to people preaching white genocide theories, to people harassing, a lot of sexual stuff, a lot of pedophile stuff, a lot of child sex stuff, which was really weird. I mean, generally speaking, these spaces, Oculus right now is a gaming platform. It's mainly kids who are using it. I don't know many other adults who want to spend time voluntarily among children, because they're they're not your kids, they're really annoying. And these people somehow spend all their time in these rooms full of 14-year-old kids, going up to them and asking them, where do you live? What do you really look like? And persuading them to do sexual things in exchange for other things. So yeah, it was really scary. We did it with the New York Times, the story just before Christmas, on the dark side of the metaverse.
So it is in a way weird that if you open something up for people, what kind of content they create over there.
Well, I mean, the key again is that there's no consequences for bad behavior, because again, so Facebook's weakness on Oculus is that you have to buy, a multi-$100 headset. And so they don't want to have someone buy a headset and then to switch it off. So they can't deplatform. They don't want to deplatform people for bad behavior. So what we found actually was that with the 100 instances of bad behavior that we found every 7 minutes, if you press the emergency button, it doesn't work. They've literally disconnected the alarm from the button. So their actual user reporting mechanism is broken. If you do it on the website, there's no feedback to tell you what happens. I literally sent the 100 videos in a Google Drive to Facebook, to Monica Bickett, the global head of content policy, and she didn't even acknowledge it. I said, there's child sexual grooming here. By law, this needs to be passed on to the FBI. No response.
We have a question from Kadri, who is asking, is it possible to see your research web? And I have a couple of links that were shared with me about the Guardian story about the 12 and the metaverse study, which is at counterhate.com. So I'll add them currently in the conversation.
The disinformation dozen is on the website, counterhate.com. If you go to the COVID tab, you'll find the disinformation dozen and the subsequent reports. Pandemic Profiteers is a very good report that explains, we went into Harold described them as 12 magical people. They're not magical people, they're companies. These are sophisticated economic actors. So we did a forensic accounting job. in looking into their companies, the 501c3s, the 990s, all the forms, we went through their accounting forms to work out how much they're worth and how they're making money. And I mean, that's one of the points, that CCDH is not a technical firm. We're not a technology firm. We're essentially investigative plus. And I mean, I've got a background in doing forensic accounting work. I spent the first 10 years of my career at Merrill Lynch and then as a management consultant. So there's a lot of sort of heavy duty, old fashioned research, but just from people who understand where digital narratives emerge and where digital malignancies emerge as well. I gotta go.
If you can answer a final question, which is,
Sure.
Can you disclose your organization's priority for 2022? There's a question like this.
Yeah,
organization's
kids.
priority.
Children safety online. It's the one issue that unites Republicans and Democrats in the US. So we're doing an enormous amount of work into that. And we already, at the end of 2021, we started doing more work in climate denial. And we've already released our first report on climate denial last year for COP26, alongside Friends of the Earth and Greenpeace. We do some work on sexual and reproductive rights misinformation. So, bad misogynist scum trying to persuade women to do FGM, stuff like that. We've already started that research program. But this year I'm focusing on kids and parents, and helping parents understand and navigate the realities of what social media means for their kids, the dangers they're exposed to, and how they can help us to change that. So those are our priorities this year.
Powerful stuff. Thank you, Imran, for sharing those insights. Very interesting to understand the business model behind the conspiracy theories and kind of the mechanisms why these things evolve. And counterhate.com is the place to for all of those who want to check out extra, because we're going on a break. And if those who want to check extra, then counterhate.com. Thank you for joining with us today, Imran. And wish you the best on really kind of finding out the mechanisms that are hiding behind the scenes and bringing them out so that they could be exposed and then somehow taken action upon.
Well, look, all of us are going to have to take action. And I think that's why I'm happy to do any forum and talk about this anywhere in the world, because we can identify the problem. But then this is a whole of society problem, is the reality, and it's going to require a whole of society solution, as individuals, as governments, but all around the world. So thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm really grateful. Cheers. Bye.